We've arrived in our limousine.
Late limousine.
Get the floor, look, it's all lit up. Lorraine's found the controls for the lights, look. Ooh, look at that. Flashing lights and everything.
Oh, even on the floor, look, wait.
Oh, there you go.
I don't know what that one is. Here is the one for
Lorraine and I touched down in, after 4.5 hours of flight, with our very own chauffeur-driven limo waiting at the airport ready to whisk us away to our 2-star hotel slap bang in the middle of the Faith District of Istanbul. After a good night of gratifying slumber, we awake at 8 AM to discover that breakfast will be served upstairs on the rooftop dining area. The view is simply awesome, but Lorraine seems slightly perplexed.
Where are we?
Istanbul. You see this body of water, right? It was about that size of the map. We were if it was floating around, and I thought we'd be able to walk across the bridge, but I don't think that's going to be doable.
No, that's not.
Is that not that?
I'm going to have a look at the map to see exactly where we are.
With our bellies full and the hunger quashed, we are ready to explore. So we go walkabout, for there is much to see and a lot more to discover.
Is that an Arabic one?
It's an Arabic African grey. We have one at home.
The Faith District of Istanbul is home to almost all of the provincial authorities, including the Mayor's Office, Police Headquarters and the Tax Office, encompassing the historical peninsula coinciding with old Constantinople.
So we have discovered that this Ahmed Square here was actually the site of the Roman Hippodrome. This is a model, a reconstruction of the original Hippodrome that stood in this place where we are just now. Because chariot races were very, very popular. Each chariot owned by a different faction. Usually a political faction or a family that had a lot of power within the Roman Empire. And each obelisk, that was one end, so they would ride round in this direction, right round that one, and then round there, and then round this obelisk here, and back round again. So this was actually the site of the Hippodrome. This obelisk here was taken from the Karnak temples, ordered by Constantine III, and it made it all the way up to Alexandria at the end of the Nile, and it lay in the sand beach for 60 years before it was finally taken up to Constantinople.
The tomb of the 14th Ottoman Sultan, Sultan Ahmed Khan, was built after his death and completed in 1619 by Sultan Osman II. The tomb is covered with marble. It has a square plan design with beveled corners and covered with a dome. We marvel at the Iznik tiles with a herbal composition and a hand-drawn underglaze technique. Most of the Khan Ottoman dynasty lie here, with the white cotton crowns signifying the female members of the family. It truly is a beautiful and serene place with an almost haunting, mystical ambience. The Basilica Cistern is the largest of several hundred ancient cisterns that lie beneath Istanbul. Originally built in the 6th century during the reign of Byzantine Emperor Justinian I, it was named Basilica because prior to its construction, a great basilica stood on the spot directly above, built during the early Roman age between the 3rd and 4th centuries. For centuries after its initial construction, the cistern expanded in size, providing filtrated water to the Topkapi Palace and surrounding buildings above, after the Ottoman conquest in 1453. The basilica has been restored several times since its original creation. Cracks in the masonry and damaged columns were repaired in 1968, with additional restoration in 1985, with 50,000 tonnes of mud removed by hand buckets because of its archaeological significance. The Bulgarian Christian Orthodox Church of St. Stephen, which is located within the Balat district of Istanbul, is famous for being made of prefabricated cast iron elements in the Neo-Byzantine style. The altar and most of the interior decor was hand-carved from timber elements and later gilded with a golden lustre. An international competition was conducted to produce the prefabricated cast iron parts of the church and was won by an Austrian company, R.P.H. Wagner. The iron elements were produced in Vienna in 1896 and transported to Istanbul by ship through the Danube and the Black Sea.
This is a video of Mark taking another video. Mark's over at the other side of the fountain, we're waiting on the water to come on so Mark can take his video.
Lorraine and I contemplate over coffee and juice and decide to take a boat ride along the mighty Bosphorus Strait. The Bosphorus Strait is a natural and an internationally significant waterway which connects the Black Sea to the Sea of Marmara and forms one of the continental boundaries between Asia and Europe. It also divides Turkey by separating Asia Minor from European Turkey, otherwise known as Thrace. And although Eastern Thrace accounts for only 3% of Turkey's land mass, it also accounts for 15% of its population. Most of the shores of the strait, except for the areas to the north, are heavily settled, with the city of Istanbul's metropolitan population of 17 million inhabitants extending inland from both banks. The Golden Horn is an estuary of the main strait that historically acted as a moat to protect Constantinople from imperial navy attack from various empires until the 19th century, after which it became a historic neighbourhood at the heart of Istanbul, where Lorraine and I currently reside. In 2022, during the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the importance of the Bosphorus as a route by which grain reached the world was thrown into sharp profile. When we finally disembark from our boat and await on shore for transportation back to our hotel, I notice some dishevelled young children trying desperately to sell packets of tissues to the weary passengers beside us. My heartstrings feel the pull of compassion and sympathy, and I almost reach into my pocket for the spare cash inside, until I see the gangmasters, probably a close relative, tugging at their little arms and pulling them along to a hopefully more lucrative spot on the shoreline. I wish it wasn't so. The Dolmabahce Palace, located in the busy Besiktas district of Istanbul on the European coast of the Bosphorus Strait, served as the main administrative centre of the Ottoman Empire from 1856 to 1922. It has always been a big wish for me to see this place since watching a documentary on TV a while ago, and it wasn't because of the fact that the palace was ordered by the Ottoman Empire's 31st Sultan, Abdul Majid I, and built between the years 1843 and 1856, or why he specifically ordered its construction, because the Topkapi Palace, where he and his family, including his harem, was deemed as medieval, lacking luxury and comfort. No, it was simply because of the gardens. And I remember the host of the documentary referring the grounds of the palace as a sight and a fragrance to behold, and she wasn't wrong. The scent of jasmine, rose, honeysuckle and more is truly evident as we wander past the small summer palaces, the numerous themed ponds and pools, dotted between wooden pavilions and garden sculptures, and it is a joy. The name of Turkey's largest palace, Dolmabahce, comes from the Turkish dolma, which means filled, and bahçe, which means garden. For before its construction, the exact location of the palace was originally a bay on the Bosphorus Strait, which was used for the anchorage of the Ottoman fleet. Gradually, during the 18th century, the bay was filled in with an imperial garden, replacing the bay itself. The palace layout and decor reflect the increasing influence of European styles and standards on Ottoman culture during the latter period of the empire. The Dolmabahce Palace is extensively decorated with gold and crystal. 14 tons of gold were used to gild just the ceilings, with 100 kilograms of gold used to decorate the rest of the palace, and floating above the main staircase, which was presently under refurbishment, is the world's largest crystal chandelier, and yes, impressive, merely touches the sides. It is simply breathtaking. Lorraine and I decide to indulge in a little retail therapy. And where better than within what is regarded as one of the first shopping malls of the world, as well as one of the largest, and OMG, it is very, very big. Big enough, in fact, that after quite a long while of browsing around a fraction of the 4,000 shops, we found it almost impossible to find an exit. The Grand Bazaar, located within the Faith district of Istanbul, is a labyrinth of 61 covered streets covering an area space of almost 31 square miles. The core of the bazaar was initially constructed shortly after the Ottoman conquest of Constantinople in 1455, and was the initiative of Sultan Mehmed II to stimulate economic prosperity in Istanbul, and to the testament of between 250,000 and 400,000 visitors daily, it is truly a remarkable and exhilarating place. We eventually find our way out and then decide to go for dinner.
Smile. Yeah, I like it. I like it. I like it.
This bit.
Eh?
This bit's the best bit.
Yeah, I had to close up the gap.
When visiting certain religiously significant locations in and around the Faith district of Istanbul, one learns to dress accordingly, and we respect the wants and the needs of those who deem it necessary to cover the hair and the flesh of what God thankfully gave us. The Hagia Sophia is a mosque and former church serving as a major cultural and historical site in Istanbul, and the last of 3 church buildings to be successfully erected on the site by the Eastern Roman Empire in 537 AD. After the fall of Constantinople in 1453, it served as a mosque until 1935, when it became a museum, and just recently, in 2020, the site once again became a mosque. The current structure was built by Byzantine Emperor Justinian I as the Christian Cathedral of Constantinople, formerly known as the Church of God's Holy Wisdom. And when during construction, when it was time to drop the massive dome onto the supporting pillars, the dome was so heavy that some of the pillars became crooked, and remain so to this day. The history of Hagia Sophia is steeped in religious struggle and controversy, historic vandalism to many of the Christian mosaics that are located on the walls within lay testament to those struggles and ideological arguments between who is right and who may be wrong. To realise and to truly understand the size and sheer scale of metropolitan Istanbul, one has to view it whilst sailing southeast from the European side towards the Prince's Islands, an archipelago just off the coast in the Sea of Marmara. Istanbul's shoreline has outgrown its natural limits, with large sections sitting on landfills, and with the 9 Prince's Islands, of which 2 we will visit today, the total area space of this sprawling and forever expanding city is a colossal 2,063 square miles. During the period of the Byzantine Empire, out-of-favour princes and other royalty were exiled on these islands, and after the Ottoman conquest in 1453, members of the Sultan's family were exiled there too. The first island we set foot on is Buyukada, which means Big Island in Turkish, and yes, it is the biggest island out of the 9. Lorraine leads the way in search of history. We end up climbing what felt like a million steps before finally reaching the top of a hill with beautiful views, but unfortunately no history. Me and Lorraine have just climbed what feels like 2 billion stairs. 2 billion steps, I'm not even getting it right. And that's what it feels like, because we've just reached the top of the island. Name coming up in the subtitles down below. I can't pronounce it correctly yet, but it's one of the 9 Princess Islands just off Istanbul, and we've climbed right to the top because Lorraine believes there's a monastery up here. Anyway.
Oh no.
We only have an hour on Buyukada, so we walk back down towards our boat in the dock. After only a few minutes of sailing, we eventually arrive on the shore of Heybeliada, the second largest island, where there is a monastery on top of the hill and another great big massive hill to climb. We take an electric taxi. No fossil fuelled vehicles are allowed on the islands, and we are whisked away to the foot of the island's central mountain. The climb was long, but not too steep, and when we do reach the top, our eyes are presented with some amazing views. And yes, the 11th century Greek Orthodox monastery, founded by Saint Photius the Great in 860 AD, Lorraine embraces the history with a smile. Located to the east of the Faith District in Istanbul stands the Topkapi Palace, the palace of residence for the Ottoman sultans since the empire's conquest until 1856, when the family moved house to the much more modern Dolmabahce Palace. After the end of the Ottoman Empire in 1923, the new government transformed the palace into a museum, and it's only since 2020, 4 years ago, that the museum has allowed the public into significant rooms and halls. The Sultan's harem, with terraced chalets where the girls lived, all that stuff. But what really hit Lorraine and me was the amount of absolutely priceless treasures, including biblical relics, the sword of King David, the staff of Moses, sitting there right in front of me, fragments from the wrist bone of John the Baptist, beard hair from the Prophet Muhammad's chin, including his sandals, footprints, letters he wrote back in the day, and even his daughter Fatima's little dress. And then we moved into the treasury. The spoonmaker's diamond, 86 carat pear-shaped diamond set in silver, surrounded by a double row of 49 mine-cut diamonds. Emeralds the size of my hand, decorating hanging mobiles, solid golden candlesticks that a forklift would struggle to lift. And almost everything that sits behind the very thick glass was stolen. The Turks were just as bad as the British when it comes to filling up museums. Every one of the 4 days that Lorraine and I sat down to a traditional Turkish breakfast, before setting out on an adventure, we were mesmerised by the view from the rooftop dining area of the Bronte Hotel where we were staying. the Marmara Sea, the Prince's Islands, the hustle and the bustle of the Old Faith district, and of course, probably the most iconic and popular monument of Ottoman architecture, the Blue Mosque. The Sultan Ahmed Mosque, that's its official name, stands next to the site of the former Hippodrome and just across the way from Hagia Sophia. Constructed between 1609 and 1617 during the rule of Ahmed I, the mosque has a classical layout with a central dome surrounded by 4 semi-domes floating over the prayer hall and flanked by 6 minarets. The mosque is decorated with thousands of Iznik tiles and painted floral motifs in predominantly blue colour, which gives the mosque its popular name. Lorraine and I have seen and learned so much of the Istanbul origin than we ever thought we would manage, but alas, it was time to take flight. Cappadocia, here we come.